I found out I was the side piece. Hello everyone. I 30M found out a few years ago that I was the side piece of my ex-boyfriend 27M, and I still haven't gotten over it. Firstly, I would like to apologize since English is not my first language, so please excuse any spelling mistakes. As the title says, a few years back I discovered that my now ex had another life on the side. Let me introduce you to how we met, and note that I am using made-up names. About 5 years ago, I was working at a hotel front desk. One day, I saw a very cute guy walking around the reception with an older man. This very cute guy, let's call him Vincent, approached me and asked a few questions about the area. I don't even remember what he asked, as I was stunned by how handsome he was. We ended up setting up a date to go to the beach the next day. We met at the beach, and Vincent explained he was on holiday with his father as his parents were divorced, and he took holidays with his dad to spend quality time together. Vincent was from a different country and was only visiting mine for a week. During this week, we met every day, and he would come by the reception whenever I was working to spend time with me. We had an amazing week together, but since I often spent time with different tourists each week, I didn't give it much thought. I knew we were only going to be together for a week, but we had the best time. Once Vincent went back to his country, we kept talking all the time. We would spend every minute talking to each other and expressing how much we missed each other. A few weeks later, seeing that we both liked each other very much, Vincent came back on holiday to my country, but this time he came alone. I took some time off work, and we spent another 7 days together. I would say we fell in love right away. I loved everything about him, and it felt like we belonged together. After the week was over, Vincent went back, but he told me he wanted to move to my country so we could be a couple. To say I was ecstatic is an understatement. A month went by, and while I thought he might change his mind, he didn't. He quit his job and prepared everything to move in with me while I found an apartment for both of us, as I was still living with my family. I found a beautiful apartment by the sea, and when I say by the sea, I mean just a few steps from the ocean. The apartment could have been featured in an interior design magazine, it was that beautiful. When the moving date arrived, I couldn't have been happier. Vincent was waiting for me at the airport, and I welcomed him with some roses. In hindsight, it was odd how he pushed them away, saying he was embarrassed. We moved into our new apartment, and Vincent seemed so happy. He loved the place, he loved the sea, and he really seemed to love me and was very happy. Even though Vincent didn't speak my mother tongue, he found a job within a few weeks after moving in together. Honestly, I couldn't have been happier. I had a job, good health, an amazing boyfriend who left his country for me, and he was incredibly handsome. Days, weeks, and months went by, and I fell more in love with Vincent. He was my everything. I always, and I mean always, refused the idea of getting married, and everyone knew this. But with Vincent, for the first time ever, I saw myself getting married and having kids with someone. I had relationships before, but I never felt this way with anyone. Of course, it wasn't perfect. We had some issues. Once, I caught him texting explicit messages and sending explicit pictures to someone. But I was so in love that I forgave him, and for me, it was like it never happened. His family came to visit a few times, his mother, his sister, and his grandma. They all seemed super nice and were very kind towards me. He would say his grandma really liked me, even though we didn't speak the same language. I never suspected anything, even when I came back from holidays with my family and my female neighbor. R told me that when I was away, Vincent had a guy at our apartment. Our neighbor was well known for her problems with drugs and alcohol, and she told me this while very intoxicated. I knew Vincent's father was going to be at our apartment while I was on holiday, so I told her that the guy at our apartment was Vincent's dad, and the conversation ended there. I told this to Vincent as a funny story about our very intoxicated neighbor, and I was surprised by his reaction. I expected him to laugh it off, but instead, he made a big deal out of it and declared our neighbor his #1 enemy. I told him that she had problems with drugs and alcohol, so not to take it personally, but he couldn't stand her after that. One day, I woke up, and he was already at work. As I do every morning, I checked the time on my phone and saw a text from Vincent. He said, "I am sorry, but I want to go back to country. I miss my family." I was very puzzled. I didn't understand what was going on since I thought we were happy. In fact, I was the happiest person alive until that point. He quit his job the same day and started planning his return to his country. Let me say that this was the most painful time I have ever experienced. I would cry at any moment, and Vincent would tell me off for it. He promised me he would come back. As devastated as I was I let him go since there was nothing I could say to make him stay. I even texted his mom and asked her to please talk to him since he was my everything. She just said there was nothing she could do. This broke me even more. While all this was happening, I changed jobs and coincidentally had a business trip the day Vincent had to fly back to his country. There were many tears, mostly from my side, the day we had to say goodbye. Luckily, I didn't see him collecting his stuff from our apartment and didn't have to see him leave with his bags. I think this would have destroyed me even more. Once my business trip was over, I went back home, and our apartment never seemed so empty. I would spend my days crying, and from being the happiest person in the world, I became the saddest. Vincent and I were supposedly still a couple, and his moving back to his country didn't mean we had to stop the relationship, since soon he was going to come back. I don't even know how I took all this BS from him. I guess I was just in love. Once he was back in his country, we would speak every day, but it was not like before. I had issues getting hold of him, and he would just say he was visiting family or friends. My birthday was coming up soon, and he promised me he would come for my birthday. A few days prior, we had a stupid fight, and he told me he would still visit but wouldn't stay at our apartment since it was too painful for him to be there, knowing he would have to leave a few days later. I didn't understand anything that was coming from him, but I went along since I loved him so much. When he came for my birthday, he asked me not to greet him at the airport since he first wanted to say hello to some ex-colleagues from work. I still feel so stupid for taking all this BS from him, but at that time, I would believe and do anything he would say. I was such an idiot. The day before my birthday, he came to our apartment to visit me, and we made love. It was amazing. I missed his body so much, and I didn't last that long. I was an addict, and he was my drug. After that, he told me he needed to go back to his hotel to sort out his stuff and that we would meet the next day for my birthday. Well, you guessed it. It didn't happen. He texted me from his hotel saying he couldn't bear the pain any longer and that he was ending our relationship and taking the first plane back to his country the next morning. I wanted to find him, but I didn't know which hotel he was staying at. So I ran to my parents' house and just cried for days. Weeks went by, and I was a mess. I would just drink alcohol day and night and even miss work. GHT about ending it all a million times. I knew then I would never feel as happy, and I would never feel such love. He would text me occasionally, saying he missed me and wanted to get back together and that he was sorry. But this would last a few hours or maybe even a few days before he would say it was a mistake and go no contact again. A few weeks went by without hearing from him. I texted some of his friends, whom I had also met since they had come to our apartment for his birthday. But no one would talk to me. The last person I knew from his circle was his ex. I didn't know him personally, but I knew they had a good relationship, and Vincent had even shown me pictures of his ex. I searched his ex's Facebook profile, and there it was. I saw pictures of them together on a recent holiday. This broke me so much. This broke my heart into tiny pieces. I gathered the courage to message him. I said something along the lines of, "Hey, sorry to bother you. You don't know me. I am Vincent's ex, and I would like to know if you know anything about him since he went no contact a few weeks ago." He replied a few hours later, and my heart was pounding. I think I had 3 heart attacks at least. He replied something like, "Hey, I am sorry, but I was at work and couldn't reply earlier. Could you explain what you mean by Vincent's ex, since we have been together for 3 years and he never talked about you? Is this some sick joke?" I was devastated. He had a double life in his country with this guy. I was the side one. I told him this was no joke, and we had been together since the first time he was on holiday in my country, and sent him a bunch of pictures to prove it. Vincent's ex immediately blocked me, and I emailed Vincent since it was the only way I could contact him. I called him every possible name under the sun. I told him how humiliated and heartbroken I was, that I couldn't believe what he did, and begged him to tell me he wasn't using me to live in paradise for some time before going back to his life. He only replied with a vague apology, saying he loved his ex and that's why he went back to him, and that he didn't love me. You can imagine how I was feeling. Alcohol was my best friend, and I was drunk all the time. I was very close to removing myself from this world, but then something happened. One day, when I came back from work, the ceiling from my apartment fell on my side of the bed. I think it was a sign. Someone or something was telling me to get out of this apartment that was bringing me so close to losing it all. This made me go back to live with my family, and bit by bit, I started getting better. I had a few other relationships, but I was never again so happy, and I didn't love them the way I loved Vincent. Vincent ended up giving me a real apology and told me he had to send that nasty email because he wanted to fix things with his ex after being caught having a double life in another country. Vincent mentioned a few times that those times with me were also the happiest in his life and that he is sad over the whole situation. He even told me a few times that he would like to visit me and see if there was anything that could be solved, but he never actually met me. The thing is, I still love Vincent. I still wish I was with him. I have forgiven him for what he did. I believe we can all make mistakes, and life can sometimes make us do things. In the last few months, Vincent and I haven't really talked. Since the last time he promised he would visit me but didn't. I have assumed we would never be back together, and probably it wouldn't even work since so much has happened, but I still love him and I still wish we could be together. Vincent, if you ever read this, I love you and always will.